Hello. This week leads up to the excitement of Easter Sunday, but to get there, we need to get through Good Friday. Far from the hymn language of glorious scars and a wondrous cross, this day is almost impossible for me. You see, I do not believe in a vindictive God who sacrifices his son. I do trust through faith in the incarnation, God being human. The language we use to explain this enigma is taut and strained, echoes back to Christmas, a baby in a manger, the Word made flesh. But if this is our starting point, then it is God who hung on a cross on that first Good Friday. I cannot cope with some vast plan of salvation that requires the sacrifice of a child, even an adult child, even a willing adult child. What I can understand is a God of love from whom we can never be separated, St. Paul says in Romans 8. So where does that leave us? For me, Jesus embodies God's love completely. Such love has to be totally selfless. And this is what I see in Jesus. It's a sort of love that challenges all hypocrisy and injustice and indignity to which we're exposed, which we still experience today. But there's a problem here. The moment we start to love those whom others do not, or who cannot love, we become a threat to them. We either have to acknowledge that love and ally ourselves with it, or ignore it, oppose it. We're inherently selfish. It's built into our genes. It's something to do with our humanity, our need to seek our own preservation. It's a biological imperative. So when Jesus challenged the powers, those around him, by challenging their economy, their culture, it was threatening. You remember the story of Jesus turning over the tables of the money changers. They were only going about their normal business. It was to be expected. No one else was challenging it. But then there's that emphasis on the importance of the widow's tiny gift. Surely the gifts of the rich were more important, more significant, more valuable. Or again, when he was heading to to raise from dead, the daughter of the leader of the synagogue, and a woman in the crowd stops him, touches his robe, and he pauses to heal her. All his priorities were wrong. And in all these ways, it felt as if Jesus was a threat to the culture and religion of the people, the very economy of the people, their way of life. How they behaved was no different from how we in similar situations behave today. They and we behave literally, naturally. And Jesus' response was the only possible response of complete and utter, unconditional, all-inclusive love. That is forgiveness. Forgive them, for literally they don't know what they're doing. And we, for all our protestations, are so often no different. And the cross becomes wondrous, not as some great theological bargain or the culmination of a cosmic plan of sacrifice, but in the revelation of the nature of total love that we are called to follow, and the human response to this call to love, because of all the sacrifice it requires us to make. It's at best, our response is at best half-hearted, at worst vicious, for here in our neighbour, spurned, derided, God is dying. The poem puts it, tortured, beaten, scarred and tainted. Not a picture deftly painted, more a tattered, battered being, torn, disfigured, stark, unseeing. Muscles twisted, strained, contorted, body dangling, bruised, distorted, lifeblood drying, sun-baked, stinging, hatred, bitter hatred singing, crowds insensate, tempers vented, full of anger, discontented, curses scattered, insults flying, spurned, derided. God is dying. And the world is shrouded in darkness, inevitably, for in darkness we cannot see. If God is dead, this really is the end. And this is why theologians then and now, you and I, seek to explain away this horror. Yet Jürgen Moltmann, some years ago, in a book which still deserves to be read, The Crucified God, sees the cross as the test of all that deserves to be called Christian, rather than the resurrection. Here we see God's utter love and willingness to be vulnerable, even unto death, in order to be one with us, in order not to deny love even to those who killed him. And the scandal and uniqueness is that gods are not meant to die. Wondrous love, wondrous God indeed, love divine, all love's excelling. So where does that leave us on that wondrous dawn of Easter Sunday, when round the world people will greet the sunrise with alleluias? Firstly, that death is not the end of love. An empty tomb was not in the first instance reassuring. Read what Mark says. Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. In another gospel, Jesus, mistaken for a gardener, speaks. He asks a woman, "Why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her a single word, her name, Mary. And he continues, "Do not hold on to me." The language is that of leaving, and for the moment we put aside the stories of Jesus appearing to the other disciples, women and men. The ongoing message is one of what next? And the answer of the Gospels and Acts is not the recollection of a dead God, but the continuing active living out in humanity of the sort of life that Jesus showed was possible for every human being. That risky life of utter love of neighbour, of every race or creed, of those like us and unlike us, so that, as Brian Wren wrote, there's a spirit in the air when a hungry child is fed. And yet in this past year, it's taken those outside of government and the church to prompt those of power to remember that simple, single message. Resurrection was not a one-off theological thing, but comes about every time someone, Christian or other, offers a simple gift of love. And that love has never died. For me, this really came about after an operation when, in its aftermath, a nurse, whose name I don't know, put her hand on my shoulder saying, "It will pass." And the sun streamed in through the window. Each hour marks a mighty resurrection, a time of overcoming fate and fear, the dawning of a common understanding in which the grace of God is drawing near. Each morning brings a sense of new creation, new life, new love encompasses the earth. New time, new light illuminates the distance as though the world is coming fresh to birth. Each evening brings a stunning revelation as stars and planets hove into our view. Beyond imagination and reflection, these scattered bangles flung against the blue. Each season brings a sense of coexistence, relatedness of heartbeat, rhythm, rhyme, and every year the cycle goes on spinning, affirming faith and love through endless time. May we hold to that faith and know that love, holding and enfolding us and those who are close to us this day and on through Easter and into the future. Amen.